There we go. Well, welcome back, everyone. What I'd like to do is just have each group, if you want to, somebody in the group would like to speak up and kind of share some of the things that you talked about, those best practices are going on. Let's start with the group with Arnie, Melissa, Scott Keith, and Lansing Chamber. That must be Michelle.
Who's going to speak? Okay. Well, I know that one of the things we talked about was just recognizing kind of those signs of burnout and being proactive, providing mental health days, allowing that flexibility. Hopefully this strengthens that conversation between employers and employees about mental health and continues to kind of break down that stigma and just reinforces that, you need your employees to be mentally and physically there. So, I think, again, just being really sensitive and aware and not being afraid, to ask those questions. I've noticed your performance is down. You don't seem as happy or as bubbly as you once were, is something going on. So, again, just continuing to drive that conversation within an organization.
Yeah, great. I think one of the things that COVID has really underscored for us is the importance of, good mental health and staying on top of those issues. Because you're right, we need that, and people need that support. Good, thank you. How about the group with Greg, Kelsey, Lori, and Raymond?
This is Lori with AM Health Plan Corporation, and I can share.
Sure.
What we talked about. We just really shared what we were currently doing with our teams. There was some that were having an everyday touch base, twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, to really just, set the stage for the day as far as, okay, what do we all need to know going into the day? And then having a touch base at the end of the day as far as what's happened during the day that we all should be aware of, as well as providing a list of what they did for the day. And that while, reported that it sometimes felt like micromanaging in the beginning, but, there was really that value that's created more of a cohesiveness between the team now that they're working remote versus when they actually were all working in the building. And I really like that idea of sort of that daily list as well, because I think in this time when, there is so much uncertainty and we go from, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. sort of walking through our lives, actually having that opportunity to write down what I did really, provides some, I guess, validation that, oh gosh, I did do something today.
Yeah, sure.
How was that?
Yeah.
And then I shared that we're doing weekly touch bases and just having an opportunity to sort of, talk about stuff, and no real agenda item to focus on, the business, but just have that opportunity to check in with people, because we are a small staff. And when we were working together, we had a lot of those opportunities to have those informal conversations.
Yeah.
And so wanted to continue to, cultivate those relationships, but yet also find the balance for those staff who, aren't as social.
Right, sure, yeah. And you sound like you're doing a great job with all those touch points of helping people stay connected, which is really what many people are missing during this time. So good, love it. Let's do the group with Andy, Ashley, John, Madeline, and Steve.
Andy, do you want to report for us?
Yeah, I mean, we had some great thought and some very interesting discussion between employees asking for some interesting things. Me being a workaholic, but I think the main thing was being flexible. Having that time to move meetings around, because it's a lot easier now. Or going for a walk or having a mental health day is, with not meeting people or having a normal schedule, having a flexible schedule is better better than nothing. So I think that was kind of the main takeaway I got out of it. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And flexibility is so much more important now. There's so many different issues that people have with kids at home and kids in school and all the things that are going on. So when you're having those meetings can be a really huge issue for a lot of people. So staying in tune with what the needs are there is really important. So thank you.
Ross, Steve was right in the middle of a sentence when we got pulled into the breakout rooms, and I would really be curious to hear what he was going to say.
Well,
Any
we
chance
don't
you
want
can
to.
have a few minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, you want to share that?
Geez, Madeline. All right, I'll do it. So what we were talking about is because these demands that Ross had pointed out, these are real. And for us to try to pretend that we can go in and run like a regular work day, we're fooling ourselves. So you have to deal with these realities, which means if you have a point in time where everyone normally got together to share thoughts or discussions or whatever, you know, you got to recognize that some of your employees are there with a 10-year-old in the room next door, and they're getting on and they're Zooming at that point in time, and they need mom or they need dad there. So when those things come up, you need to have the ability to throw the flag and say, I can't make it at 10 o'clock for our typical alignment session. Can we do 11 today? And you're going to find out that people are really going to be willing to allow that to happen.
Sure.
So what things that we used to do in the past in terms of rigid schedule become less rigid because it's the reality of what we're dealing with, right? The other thing that we find is, you know, you need to ditch the boss more often. I hear many firms are now getting together and doing the huddles and the planning and all that. Well, go talk to your people or talk to people in these businesses that are doing it, not the boss, but the people that are doing it. And you're going to find out that they are kind of trumping up. I shouldn't use that word now, I guess. But what they're doing is kind of creating their list of actions, or they feel that they've got to go through this mechanical process of reporting. And what we're also finding is that these sorts of things in terms of day planners and longer term planners and project plans, those kinds of things are now starting to be talked about and used more frequently, when we as leaders actually should have had those in place in the past. And we should be depending on plans, not people reporting to plans. And we should be depending on outcomes, not where people are on a particular task. And we should only intervene when they need us to intervene, not to be checking on them. Because as Lori's pointing out, it's a good thing she's doing, but she's pointing out that it looks like Big Brother and it feels a lot like Big Brother because they haven't managed like that in the past, right? That's okay. Right. But if you can create that culture where you do that as a natural part of your planning process and your day-to-day process, it doesn't look and it doesn't feel like Big Brother. We have a rule in our organization. I can't pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, I need your help. I got to send them a note and say, hey, you got 5 minutes? Can we get together later, chat about something? Because you know what? My computer's not going to burn up, or the client's not going to collapse if I can't get done what I need to do right now and try to impose my priorities on other people in the organization. So there's a culture and a behavioral piece that really, you have it or you build it. And if you're going to build it, you need to sustain it past what we're living with today. So, and the reason I say ditch the boss is because let your people get together and say, how can we make these sessions more productive versus trying to serve what I think my boss wants me to hear me say, right? And what you're going to find out, they're actually going to they're going to restructure what some of those messaging should be and how one goes about doing this sort of thing, or you can help them understand. We've been doing those sorts of things now for the past 25 years, where we call them huddles. Right. But we don't talk about what are we working on or what do we plan. We talk about something motivational. We talk about what's going on today. We talk about somebody's birthday. It's never about the business, other than how do we use a tool to get better in what we do as people, what we do to serve our team, what we do to serve our clients, what we do to serve our families. So think about it, that way, because I've got all the mechanics, all the to-dos list, all the action items, all the outcomes, all the reporting, all the metrics. Those things are operating daily. It's a systemic start of how our business should operate. So use this to build those if you don't have them.
Yeah, great. But thank you. Thank you so much.
You're probably sorry you asked, Madeline. But
no, not at all. Thank you for sharing it. And thank you, Madeline, for getting Steve to speak up there. Let's go to the last group: Ashley, Eric's, Joni, Stephanie, and Steve.
Hi, Ross. All right. So pretty much echoing what everyone else has to say. And it's a shame having to follow up what Steve. So
yeah, how do you follow up that? Yeah.
So pretty much, focusing really on doing those mental health disconnect days. That's obviously really important. I was just mentioning to the group too. Monday and Tuesday, I had PTO days just to take and have to burn. But I was telling them, even, because getting emails on your phone, constantly looking at them, and I will admit, I'd send a few. I had no intention of really following up, and not really doing anything until Wednesday. But still, I was still looking at my phone. I hadn't fully disconnected, just because, especially me, I'm in an apartment, so I don't really have I don't have a dedicated fully workspace, or office, so I can't just walk by it and not think about it. It's always just constantly right there. But so really emphasizing those disconnect, the mental health days and stuff, so it's always really important. And then also doing the weekly check-ins, just obviously not talking about work, just talking about the personal side of things. And also, Ross, what you had said too at the start, before the breakout rooms, whenever you first have those meetings, talking about, how are things? How are, if you have kids,
Yeah.
how are the kids doing? How's the wife? How's the husband? How's everything else going, kind of thing? Talking about that, because obviously you're right. People do want to open up. People do want to, not just talk about work things, even though you are, possibly talking about, in a work meeting kind of thing. And then, lastly, we had talked about, for the holiday season, doing virtual events. One of the individuals had said that they had sent a card to their employees for them to not open until the holiday party and stuff. And so then they were doing and so it was for the event right there during the holiday party and stuff. And so it was a lot more engaging. She said, it was scheduled for an hour, but then they went over to an hour and a half. So it was a nice breakup of the normal typical workday and stuff. So that's what their group had delivered.
Great, good, awesome. Wow, terrific engagement, you guys. Thank you so much for your engagement and for the great conversations that you had there. I've got just a few things that I want to add. You guys have really done a good job of covering it here. A lot of the great things that you're already doing. Here's just a few other thoughts along the way. A couple of these things you touched on, so we won't need to spend a lot of time on them. This is a perfect time for coaching your team up. We think about, we're coming to the end of the year. We go to the first of a new year's. Typically when we do these kinds of goal setting types of things, when people are setting their annual goals, and it's important. There's all kinds of research behind this. People should be writing goals down. We know that writing a goal down becomes the first step in achieving that goal. So what I like to talk about with leaders is, when you're coaching people, co-create an action plan for growth. In other words, you're going to coach them. What are you interested in? What do you want to go? What are your goals for next year? And you also have some thoughts on what could be part of that plan. So you really sit down with a team member and co-create that action plan, and make sure that you're having regular reviews during the year. At a minimum, it should be quarterly. If you can do it monthly, that's even better. But what kind of progress are they making? How do we need to recalibrate it as we go along? Because obviously, as we know from 2020, things change, and we're going to have to adjust as we go along. But really give them that blueprint, work with them to have a blueprint for growth for next year and what that looks like. And make sure you get beyond the metrics. Yeah, we want to improve sales by 5% or 7% or whatever that is, all the other numbers that are out there. But get beyond the metrics and get to the person involved when you're coaching them. And then again, this is research based, but we know that if we can help people unleash their creative spirits, they're going to be more effective. There's an awful lot of negative energy out there right now, as we know. And if we can help people engage in an expressive outlet that works for them, they can overcome that negative energy. They can get more closer to the best person that they can be. Here are a few things that you can consider. Art is something that you can do. You don't have to go take a painting class together as a team, but you could. But other ways that you can, perhaps incorporate art. I had one group that I coached this year. They did the virtual happy hour every week, and somebody got a Microsoft Paint program, and they started playing Pictionary together every week, and they had a blast with it. So things like that. Connecting them to nature. Now I know we're coming into the middle of the winter, and that sounds, maybe a little counterintuitive, but I'll tell you, I've noticed recently going to some some brief walks outside. It feels really good out there. And I'm not much of a winter person, but this is something to keep in mind year round. We know that people can connect to nature. When we get back into spring, you can get on the river walk or go kayaking or whatever that looks like. In the winter, maybe you could go, ice skating or build a snowman or whatever that is. But, the ability to connect to nature helps feed that creative spirit. And then we talked about this a little earlier, but what people really crave is the connection. Just like the connection to other people, the connection to your organization, the connection to the world. So whatever you can do to help them feel connected. A couple of people talked about having touch points a couple times a day, having another one at the end of the week, whatever that looks like. One of the reasons I had to do the small group breakout was just to have you experience that feeling of being more connected to other people. That's where that increases engagement. Some of the best learning for many of you, the best learning experience in this hour is going to come from what somebody said in that breakout session. So things that you can do like that can help people feel connected. I coached a guy earlier this year. He's got about 100 people on his team, and he had a new CEO in the organization. So we're talking about helping people feel connected on the team. And one of the things we came up with was during their team meetings is occasionally have another stakeholder, somebody else from the organization come in and just speak for a few minutes to help them feel connected to what's going on in the organization. Because when people are at home, they tend to feel apart from that. And so he started doing that and found it was very well received. And he had a new CEO, and he also wanted to build a relationship there. And we kind of combined the ideas. Why don't you have the CEO come in and be one of your speakers, which he did, and people loved it. And it helped people increase that sense of connectedness that they were missing. And then help people feel connected to their passion. This goes back to our coaching conversation from a few minutes ago. As you're coaching people, help them identify and connect to their passions. Great coaching question. What are you passionate about? Or what gets your juices flowing? And see where people are. How does that align with what they're doing? Or does it? Are there opportunities maybe for people to engage in a special program or a special assignment or a special project, maybe so they could do something maybe that they feel really passionate about and help them feed that creative spirit? By helping people in these ways, you can really overcome that negative energy that's out there and get people focused in a more positive and rejuvenating type of way. A couple of you mentioned this, the importance of mental health days. Absolutely. Everybody needs to recharge their battery. There's a principle that's known as oscillation, which is really essentially refers to the repetitive variation of two or more states. And basically what a lot of experts say is that leaders need to balance periods of energy expenditure with regular periods of rest. Mental health days are a great way to do that. And you know what? You find out the world will still be there when everybody comes back. And you'll have a better team member and better team members and for having that extra day off. Make sure that we have a culture where work-life balance matters. It's important that you encourage your people. I don't want to say make them, but we strongly encourage people to take their days off. And you need to take yours as well. People need to get away. We need to recharge. It's a crazy, exhausting world right now, and people need a break. And we need to get away from this culture where we're constantly wired in checking our emails, checking our voicemails. Every time we check our email when we're off or check our voicemail, we're taking ourselves right back to the stress of work. And we're undoing a lot of good that the recharging process is supposed to be doing for us. I had an executive go through one of my programs a few years ago, and she shared a story about she and her husband bought a hot tub. And their idea was every night before bed, they'd get in the hot tub and relax and then go to bed. Well, when she got out of the hot tub, she'd check her email one more time before she went to bed. And for about 3 months, she was having trouble going to sleep. She finally made the connection between the fact that she was checking her email. She stopped making that last check. You know what she found out? Things didn't really change that much from when she checked it 3 or 4 hours earlier. And the reality was, whatever she saw that got her stressed out, she wasn't going to do anything about it till the next morning anyway. So she stopped checking that email and she started sleeping better. So we need to disconnect. If you can't do it for a whole day, do it for a half a day, and disconnect from social media. Have times when you truly disconnect and get yourself away from it. Technology is a wonderful thing, but it's encroaching in our lives in ways that adding layers of stress. And this is something, whenever I teach this, I get a lot of pushback on it. I know it's difficult. I'm happy to talk to you offline about that if you want some more tips on how to achieve that. But make sure that your people are taking their days off and that you're having their assignments covered for them when they're gone, and try to get away from that culture where we're looking at emails and voicemails when we're off. Just a couple more slides and then we'll get to some questions and any other conversation that you want to have around this. But it's really important for leaders. We have to be the ones who are positive and see that positive path forward. There is a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of exhaustion. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. We've talked about the mental health issues. And part of that is because we're all consumed with the day-to-day. Every day, all we seem to do is go from one Zoom call to another. We're constantly going from one brush fire to another. And as leaders, it's our job. We need to be able to balance that, the fact that everybody is going from brush fire to brush fire, with the fact that you can take the longer view, that you can see that there is an end in sight. We're coming to the end of the road here, that there is a positive path forward. Your ability to remain positive in the face of daily challenges will have a huge impact on your success and your team's success. And when I say be positive, that doesn't mean that you wear rose-colored glasses or that you resist tackling thorny problems or that you overlook downward trends or you don't hold people accountable. We have to do all of those things. It simply means that no matter the challenge that you and your team face, you'll remain positive about your ability to overcome those challenges. And you want to be the leader who takes the long view and the opportunities that exist in the midst of challenges. And be the leader who sees that path forward and lead your team down that path. And then shift the focus. We get so darn consumed with what's going on in our world, and sometimes, we tend to overlook all the people that have it worse than we do. And one thing we know is there are a lot of people out there who do. One of the things that really blew me away this year during the midst of the pandemic were all the people out there doing great things to help, the healthcare workers, the first responders, the elderly, all the people in the community. And we know this is a giving, loving community. But I saw so many people who I knew personally. Your business is closed. Your people are laid off. You don't have any cash flow coming. You don't even know if you're going to reopen your business, or when you do, how long you're going to be able to sustain it. And yet those people were people that were out there doing their part to help make the world a better place. And we know this is something that we should be doing in organizational culture anyway. We know it's incredibly important for talent attraction and retention, that people want to know that the organization that they work for is connected to making the world a better place. Particularly true for millennials and Gen Z, who are going to be 75% of the workforce by 2025. So this is an expectation anyway, and this is something where you can help others by shifting the focus to that connection, that sense of social responsibility and making the world a better place. 2 more slides and we're done here. And then developing the potential. Everybody wants to get better. This goes back to our coaching conversation. Everybody wants that plan. Help them develop that plan. Everybody's in a different place in terms of their readiness to go to the next level. So their development program needs to be customized to meet where they're at. So work on that plan, whatever it looks like. It can be trainings. You can take team trainings to help build a better team. You can do a lot of other things, like having a book club, reading a good book and having some time together to talk about it, or doing some TED Talks, whatever that looks like. It helps let people know you really care about them. And the number one thing we see in surveys time and time again about when people are asked, what's important to you about where you work? The number one thing that comes back every time is, I want to work someplace where people are going to help me realize my full potential. Again, it's another huge talent and attraction issue that we should be doing anyway. And when we talk about supercharging your team, this is a big one. And finally, the most important thing that you can do for everybody else in your world, whether it's your team members, your peers, your boss, your other stakeholders, your family, and your friends, is make sure that you're taking care of you. We talked earlier on the call about people not getting sleep. Are you getting enough rest? You're getting your exercise and your nutrition. Every one of us on this call, myself included, has one thing that we could commit to today that we could do a little bit better to help move the needle on this issue. You see the words body, soul, spirit, and mind. You need to be feeding all 4 of those energy sources in your life. You don't need to feed them all on the same day, but in some way you need to feed all 4 of those sources in your life. And if you take care of yourself, there's going to be a better you for everybody else in your world. So making time for you is not a selfish act. It is the best thing that you can do for everybody else. And make sure that people on your team are doing what they can do to do a little bit better job of taking care of themselves as well. And there's my contact information. If you're interested, I can put my email in the chat box. If you'd like to get a hold of me, happy to talk to you about any of these topics at any more length offline as well. So, and with that, I'll hit the pause button and see what questions that you have or additional comments here in the last few minutes that we have.
Thank you, Ross. I really appreciate all of the information. It's been super helpful. And again, such a good reminder that at the heart of all of our organizations is our people, and we need to make sure that they are well taken care of, especially during such a challenging year. Scott, Keith did drop a question in here, and I'll just kind of read it verbatim for you. Ross, I don't believe we will have a switch when we go back to business as normal. How, as leaders, can we understand the balance of needing to be back in the office and back to some of the same practices versus the current situation? We don't want to appear like we're cracking the whip or being too flexible.
Yeah, great question. And that's going to be the new normal, I guess, when we get to the next phase, I guess. And I think it comes down to making sure I think one of the really good things that's come out of this is we talked about earlier is just the fact that giving people space to, continue to acknowledge what's going on and having those honest conversations and recognizing that everybody is in a different place. When we come back, people are going to feel very different about it. And we saw it before when people started coming back, when HR said they're going to start bringing people back in waves. There were people out there going, hey, me first, I'm ready to come back. And there are other people that don't feel that way. So recognizing that everybody's going to feel different about that and working with them, letting them know that you care that and see where they're at, and then coaching around that. I think kind of what we've been doing, and we're just going to have to continue to do it, because you're right. There's no switch. We're not going back to where we were. The world has changed forever, and we're going to have to adjust and adapt and be flexible.
Absolutely. One of the questions I had written down here was, with the amount of workload that we're all balancing, and the fact that the needs of our clients or our members are very heavy right now, how do we maybe empower our employees to set those boundaries or to say no? It can be the word no can be very hard for some of us to utter. So how do we empower our employees to set those boundaries and maybe say no every once in a while?
Yeah, that really is a great question. And I think that as leaders, we have to, build that culture where people feel comfortable. And when I tell leaders, a lot of times it's about trust. And the key to trust is for us as leaders to be willing to be vulnerable, to admit. And if we're willing to be vulnerable, people around us will be vulnerable. They're going to take the cue from the leader. So I think just building that level of trust where people feel comfortable. And again, it gets back to those conversations about just coaching and encouraging people to bring out what's really going on in their world, especially the people that may sit back and might not be in their nature to talk about it, or they don't want to burden people with it. So we have to engage with them and help bring it out of them.
Well, we have about 1 minute left, and you know, obviously Zoom isn't going anywhere, and it's been, I think, a tough balance for people to find with every meeting that we have to do being on Teams or Zoom or some type of other virtual platform. How do we, you know, how do we combat that fatigue and still, you know, and not tune out and not ignore the value of this platform just because it's become such a big part of our lives?
You're worn out with Zoom? You're fatigued by Zoom? You have Zoom fatigue, really? Great question. How do, you know, I think again, getting back to taking care of ourselves is on a lot of these things is, you know, if we're eating well, if we're getting our rest, if we're taking that walk or whatever it is, just so we feel better, we have the energy to deal with whatever challenges. You know, we're overloaded, you know, we're overwhelmed, whether it's Zoom or whether it's something else. We've got more coming at us and more commitments than we've ever had before. And so we have to, in the face of that, making sure that we're doing the best to take care of ourselves, to be the best person that we can be, with a lot more energy and a lot more positive vibes to deal with whatever challenges coming, whether it's Zoom or anything else. And that's where I would really encourage everybody to look at what's that one thing you could do today, maybe, to make you feel a little bit better, and move the needle on that a little bit.
That's a great, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'll throw something out there to compliment Ross. Thanks for the good insights. I think from a Zoom perspective, we're all expecting the presenter to be the one that carries the torch on how successful these sessions are. And actually, I'm writing something right now on how to be a good Zoom participant and learner, because what we are all accountable for is to walk away from this session with every session that you have, at least one good nugget, something that you can incorporate, something that you can use. If not, you've just wasted 60 minutes of your life. And that's a bad investment. So we're putting together a little template about how to, stay tuned, how to be a really active learner participant on Zoom, because everybody here should be shouting out with chats. You should be using your emojis. You should be doing things so that you're mentally engaged, not flocking out to check your phone and all those other things. Not that that's not important. You still got to live your life. But the reality is, don't you spend your time on these things unless you're walking away with something really, really valuable. And if you're doing it, it's, you know, shame on you, because we should all walk out of here. I learned some stuff from Ross, and we'll learn some stuff from you guys every day. Make your Zoom highly interactive, and you as a participant are accountable to walk away so that this is a great experience for you, not just the presenter. So I'll be quiet.
Steve,
Great,
what a
thank you.
great point. And when you're done with that piece, you know, share it. And we would love to put that out, because you're absolutely right. So much of this is, you know, what we put into it and how we engage with the content. It's a little after 11, so I want to make sure, again, to be respectful of everybody's time today. We will send out a follow-up email with Ross's contact information. I know Steve Jappinga mentioned some of Ross's social media sites. Make sure to follow that. Great leadership, great team content, very, very valuable. So we'll make sure to put some of those links in there. And thank you to Lori as well for the mention of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Obviously, this is the winter time is a tough time just naturally. So make sure that we have all the people in our lives that we're reaching out, we're connecting, and we're asking questions and making sure that everybody's just hanging in there and doing okay. At that time, thank you guys again for joining us. This is our final program as a chamber as we head into 2021. We are so excited to see you guys next year, and look forward to working really hard with you guys in the trenches and continuing to put this community back on track. So thank you guys again.
Thank you.
I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year. And we'll see you in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross.
Bye, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Steve.
I have this.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ross. Amazing presentation, like as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You as well. Take